ignorance is the death of empathy. And right now we're fighting so much more ignorance than we've ever fought. And and it's just scary. I think we used to care more about people, and now it feels like more and more people can't afford to see past their own nose, or just choosing not to. Anyone who complains about anything in this country, as long as you're from Ontario, and I don't know the situation in every province, but as long as you're from Ontario and you're Canadian and you want to complain about politics, I don't want to fucking hear it, because you voted in a guy on a buck of beer, and then you voted for the other guy because he wanted to legalize pot. So you got your party. You know what I mean? You fucking idiots. Like, that's exactly what, you did this to you. The idea was to have TV and film happening, this whole time, and then I was gonna have all this money to build like almost a little production studio. Was the idea? Just not happening. TV and film going on strike fucked my life.
Yeah, it's a fucking fickle business. But you know what? Like, I always tell people, especially the people that are in TV and film, or anyone that's experiencing a strike, it's like, at least in TV and film, you went for the thing that you love to do, because like my mom was a nurse and my dad was a welder. And I remember there being times in their career where they almost had layoffs and lost their jobs. So it's like, you could lose something that you don't even like doing. So you might as well try to do the thing that you like doing.
Yeah. With this, it's like, I wish I had found it 20 years before. Because it was like, I fell ass backwards into this job, and it's like a fucking 6-figure a year job if you want to work like a lot. I mean, it's for a single guy to make this kind of money, that just doesn't happen very often. So
yeah, especially being a single dude, it's like your expenses are so minimal, so it's like it gives you way more chances to keep that money.
Once I'm making grip money, I'm literally just going to be using it to chase stand-up.
Yeah, that's a great way to use the money.
Man, I'm gonna go on, like, in the summer. I'll be busy, and I still have weekends, so I can still do shows. But like, I'm gonna be working my ass off, and then when everyone else goes on unemployment and sticks around Ontario and just does nothing, I'm gonna take that money and just Austin, maybe New York, maybe LA. What does it matter?
Dude, Austin would be sick. That would be the move.
Yeah, man.
They're seeing not even just the mothership, but that whole area is just like comedy clubs popping up. You've got the Sunset Strip, that's Red Band's club, Creek in the Cave, which was like an old club in New York City that then moved out to Texas. Rebecca, I think, owns that one. So there's like lots of like really solid places. It's becoming like its own hotspot relative to New York and LA.
I think the reason I'm excited about it is that, like, let me know when you want to get going. We can get going.
Oh, yeah. I record the whole conversation, and then I just cut in wherever it kind of makes sense.
Oh, okay. Well, then that makes sense. Yeah. The way I look at it is that, like, it's capital you can spend on yourself after, like, kind of just treading water in Canada for such a long time. And for me, it's like, I'm looking forward to just the small amount of stage time I can get with each trip. And then, like, if I show up enough times, people understand that I'm spending like a full-time job's wage on pursuing this. And then when you show up where you're not just a micer, you're showing up with like 24 years experience in my case.
That's the way you should do it.
That's it. The idea is, if I can get down there and grab some stage time, just fucking watch me go, because like, anyone who does it, and you've got stories of people that you look up to that have said it, it happens where, like, they get to these places in the States, and, like, there's all these cats that don't want to give them the time of day, before they get on stage, but then they get off stage and all of a sudden they want to talk to them, because you can tell right away when you're a comic whether or not somebody's been around.
Yeah. You can see it in the pacing. You can see it in the confidence on stage, like
everything,
the thought process behind the jokes, whatever.
Everything. So, like, the second you get off stage, maybe you make a few connections with people who appreciate what you do, or at least can tell that you've been doing it for some time.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the word that you selected for this episode was empathy. Do you still want to do that word?
Yeah, of course. I think
Okay.
that's probably the most important word. That's the if this whole thing was Sesame Street, that would be the word of the day
Yeah, that's basically
every
my podcast is adult
every
Sesame
day.
Street.
It's I don't know. I think it's very. You feel more and more lucky to have been born when I was. I was 1980, and as far as childhoods go, we have nothing to complain about. I mean, like we were so far behind in so many ways, but I mean, there's a lot of ways today where we could take a page out of where we were.
Yeah.
And I think it's empathy is the big thing. And I said something to a friend, and I swear he went online and tried to make sure. I don't know if he was trying to out me or trying to make sure that I wasn't stealing it as some kind of a quote. But I said to him, I feel like ignorance is the death of empathy, and right
Mhm.
now we're fighting so much more ignorance than we've ever fought, and like. And it's just scary. I think we used to care more about people, and now it feels like more and more people can't afford to see past their own nose, or just choosing not to. But I mean, it's something that it gives you something to comment on, I guess. In comedy, it's something to talk about. But goddamn, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, man. And you think with like the wealth of information that we have with the internet that, kind of the way of ignorance would sort of go to the side. But like if anything, the worst parts of humanity with social media at least have just been amplified. Like
Yeah,
it's
it's one of these things. I think it's almost where I blame things, and I mean, a lot of people do. This is why I would, though, is that like I come from a very small community. I come from a very small place called South River, Ontario, and it's a village of 700 to 1,000 people at any given time.
crazy.
And yeah, it's pretty nuts. And then before social media, that 700 or 1,000 people, that was my Facebook.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And then that's your community. And I think what happens with social media and your phone is that you stretch this what you think is this community, and now this community is this global thing because you have access to everyone. But because everyone is not within arm's reach, within being able to stop over and talk about what's going on or something. I think it's like we've lost a sense of community. I think that's part of it. And you'll see people, and not to fault them because they're still trying to do something positive, but like, I know somebody that I've seen on my Facebook, and I know where this person lives. They live directly across from a woman's shelter down wherever. And when you see them posting about saving a chihuahua in California from a kill shelter, and it's like, okay, well, it's great. I'm really glad that the chihuahua saved itself from the kill shelter. I've not once seen her post about going across the street to donate some clothes or something. And I think it's like, just a sense of community is what we're losing.
Yeah, it's sad when like I recently saw Mr. Beast put out a video called like building 100 wells in Africa. And
That's amazing.
I was like, but he's a YouTuber. Like he shouldn't it
Have to.
should be the government that is doing
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
that like cares about these issues, but it's like
Well,
they
I
just
think this is,
don't,
I
or
think,
it's just
yeah.
like greed that takes over, or
I think greed is kind of the thing that we're facing more than anything. And like, I mean, we are just comics, so who are we to say? But I think,
oh, I
more than
think we are the
ever,
only ones to say, my friend,
right?
because we're the people that just like
I
are
always I preface
constantly
it with,
looking.
yeah, I preface it with that. But I think it's like we have to say things if you've got a platform and you're on stage and you decide you want to do some edgelord stuff. Well, if your edgelord stuff also at the same time doesn't say anything, well, then to me
Yeah.
it's like if we're not saying something, I think we're wasting our time up there. But I think, like, I had somebody put it this way, that we're in sort of like a veiled aristocracy. You know what I mean? Where
Hmm.
it's like we have the illusion of democracy with the way that things are run, but really now I think in most governments and most countries around the world, everyone has let their government slip into this thing where basically they're there to serve, big oil, big pharma, the military construct.
Yeah.
And there's like these powers that be that just run the goddamn show now. And it's like, they know that we've got them by the numbers, but because we're so distracted with all of the bullshit, we'll never come together and knock on their front door and say, listen here, motherfucker. So like they've really
Yeah.
got a good one, they got a real good one going, and how do you, who knows, man?
It's
It,
the
it's
the
it's a
government I've
wild,
always said is the biggest like mafia ever. Like it's like they just
it
have
totally
complete
shouldn't. Yeah.
control and fear. Like they have a what is it? It's a they have a monopoly on violence.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's they've gotten bold about it too in the
Mhm.
last little while. It feels like that's always been the case, maybe, but it just feels more and more like somebody knows something we don't know. Like when you're this bold about taking the way that people are taking recently, it's like, is somebody selling a ticket somewhere because this ship's, what's going on? Because like I don't know if it's because they're under like a more, a, a better magnifying glass now, and they've always been doing it this kind of bold and sloppy, but from just provincial stuff with the Doug Ford stuff, the idea that that guy even got voted in and his brother was his resume, and then
Crazy.
like, well, first of all, I don't, anyone who complains about anything in this country, as long
Hmm.
as you're from Ontario, and I don't know the situation in every province, but as long as you're from Ontario and you're Canadian and you want to complain about politics, I don't want to fucking hear it, because you voted in a guy on a buck of beer, and then you voted for the other guy because he wanted to legalize pot. So you got your party. You know what I mean? You fucking idiots. Like
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
exactly what, you know,
But here's my
you
thing.
did this to you.
Here's my thing though. We almost voted for like the lesser of two evils in all of those situations because every politician always espouses some bullshit that they tell
Right,
you that
right.
they're going to do, and then they go around and do whatever
I
they
think
want to do
ultimately
anyways.
I think ultimately, like when you're looking at choosing a prime minister, and I'm not a Pierre Poilievre guy either. I am for whoever the fuck starts to make sense.
Hmm.
For me, I love everything that Jagmeet's saying, and then sometimes the way that it's
But he
it's
pisses
all
me off
such
now too because
it's all such bullshit.
he says shit like he complains about the liberal party, but then I'm like, then why did you form a coalition with them?
This is the big
You
this is the big
know.
question, right? It's this political thing where like the NDP is just trying to hold on to whatever. I think anybody who brings up the things he should be bringing up, I like him, you know what I mean? But like you get what you deserve, right? Like we hired a high school dramatic arts teacher as our prime minister
There's
because of
old
who's
video of him too being asked if he'd be prime minister, and within a second, without hesitation, he goes, "No, never." Like as a kid, he's being interviewed by the news because his dad is who his dad is, right? And he's like, "No, I'd never want to do that."
but like he also probably understood it didn't make sense. He has no formal education in,
Yeah.
in this type of thing other than growing up in his dad's house. If you wanted to hire a former prime minister's son, at least I think Ben Mulroney is a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, he might be hosting an entertainment show, but I think he's actually educated past. This is our swamp. Let's breathe into our swamp today, and we're gonna do some charades. Like you get what you get, and like I've always thought that like politics, when it comes to it, they always say that like they make too much money. I don't think they make enough. I just think that the job needs to be completely gutted, all of the jobs, the grandfathering in of friends here and stuff like that. I mean, start right from scratch, and then this is what I would do if, as a counselor, you make $400,000.
Mhm.
I'm going to pay you $1 million. But here's the reason why. Because now you have a position where you're offering somebody $1 million, and now all of those people who are the people you want taking these jobs, who looked at the 400,000, realized that their education means in the private sector they're worth more than that. Now you have those people who would have been making their own $1 million take a look at a job like that and go, maybe I will do it. Now, the other stipulation I would put in is complete and utter transparency with like expected audits. Like, you should feel like you're going to be audited because you will. Your finances are transparent because of what our history is.
Yeah.
So here's the job. You just do the job and do it well. Everyone is going to know whether or not you're fucking anybody over for money. But
Yeah.
guess what? You don't need to, because you're making $1 million a year.
It
But
reminds me of the
now,
saying, a lock keeps an honest man out, where it's like if a politician is in a point of position where they realize that like everything they do is going to be exposed to the public, everything, you're less likely to be corrupt or try to like corrupt or be greedy in any way.
I think that's exactly it. And the problem is that, like, we want to, there's still this group of people that want to assume that we can expect better from politicians. And it's quite obvious that we can't, because people will always let their personal interest and their personal gain and the fattening of their pockets, influence the choices you're making. Like some of the stories you hear of the pandemic in terms of old Dougie, like the idea that his family owns a sticker print. This is what I've heard. His family owns a sticker printing company where they
Mm-hmm.
print stickers. And he gave his family's company the contract to print the Stay 6 Feet Apart stickers.
What?
And then told the buildings how many they needed to have on the floors,
Yeah,
and then
that's
sold them to
so
every.
corrupt.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's
but there's sticker
insane.
companies that apparently have come forward going, we didn't even get to bid on the contract.
Yeah, if I'm a cop and I go up to a case and I know the person, I'm not allowed to work on that case. If
That's
a
it, right?
politician has to hire someone and he knows one of the, he goes, you can't be in on this bid. I know you. It has
This
to
is it,
come
right?
down to like who's going to do the best job for the lowest
Essentially
price.
printing money. I mean, there's estimates people have said, and then of course, if you're somebody who's a fan of Doug Ford, you would say, well, there's no hard evidence. And you go, okay, look, but that's the only thing we don't have. You know what I mean? Everything else is cut and dry. I mean, the idea that you had the families from those real estate companies at your daughter's wedding,
Yeah,
and then those happen to be the two families that put the bids in on the fucking green belt.
it's crazy.
Like, this is like a Sopranos thing, man.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
are you
yeah.
just get out of here? Like, it's just, at this point, it's just really bold. You know what we're leading to is that we're gonna have all these kids put a halt to building their Iron Man costumes with these 3D rendering machines, and we've got to get them working on guillotines,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and start dragging these rich bastards out into the streets,
uh,
lopping their heads off. Like the idea that Jeff Bezos, they say, will be a trillionaire at some point. I mean, like, it's past evil. It's just like
it I've
it's
heard this
past
before. It's
evil.
it's immoral to have that much money.
Absolutely. Well, I think to have that much money and to say to yourself, well, I'm pretty sure I can get by on $1 billion,
Yeah.
and then saying, maybe with this other $999 billion, I can feed the hungry children. I can fucking build roofs
Look at that
over
dude out
people.
out east. There was some guy out east that sold his company for like 8 figures, and he took a large chunk of that money and he built like a bunch of tiny. He bought up all of this real estate and he built a bunch of tiny homes for the
I
homeless
love it.
population in his city. He said, "There
I
you go.
love it.
There's a
I
house.
love
That's
it.
the first start. It's not a lot, but at least is
No,
somewhere to keep you warm. Somewhere to cook a
it's
meal, somewhere
someplace
to
you can.
sleep."
Yes, to call your own, to give yourself a little sense of pride.
Yeah, yeah.
Myself and a friend of mine for almost 4 years, and financially, whenever you can get back to it, I'd love to. But for almost 4 years, we didn't miss a Sunday, and we would get out. Sometimes we would give away 35, 45, 50 meals, and then like it was like a meal, and then $5 and a bottle of water. And we would just whip around the downtown core every Sunday like Batman and Robin. He'd drive, I'd jump out and hand out the meals. And I guess, in all that time, what we realized is the whole stereotype of these people being drug addicts and alcoholics and stuff like that, and they choose this life and stuff like that. I we're in the dark ages of knowing anything about mental health and about the human brain. And if the one thing that I found 90% of the time, because there was the 10%, but 90% of the time we found lost kids who had grown up, who need meds and have no parent or loved one to remind them to take them. And then they're fucked. And yeah, okay, they're getting drunk or something, but it's only because there are some serious meds for whether it's bipolar, schizophrenia, who the fuck knows. But like when you run out of people to care about you and you're not where you need to be to take care of yourself. And I mean, it goes back to empathy, the lack of compassion, and
Was
you
that
don't
Dan
need to.
Pena quote where he says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. If you end up on the streets and you're surrounded by other people on the streets, they are just going to, similar to going to jail. Jail either reforms you or makes you a better criminal, because like you're surrounded by people who are talking about like their hardship and how they ended up here, and you're more susceptible to leading down a worse path if those people aren't as willing to try to get out of that life, right? There's
Well,
some
I
people who have
think
just
that
accepted that they're going to live on the streets forever.
the whole construct of jail and that idea, I mean, it's just as archaic as things, from just 20 years ago. I got talking to a friend of mine the other day where, I recently, a month and a half ago now, I'm 43, and only a month and a half ago, I'm a part of this. And people say it's very trendy. To them, I say, go fuck yourself, because I could have used these meds my entire life. So fuck your trends. But I recently got diagnosed with ADHD, and so we got talking about how we were a generation that just got left, because like when we were kids, there was no diagnosis. There was either kids or there was slow kids, and slow kids could mean a fucking myriad of things. Slow kids could mean that this kid who's quite literally fast. Like it meant everything under the sun. And when I was a kid, the way they dealt with it, and think about this today, but the way they dealt with it when I was a kid is it didn't matter what grade you were in. If there was one or two kid in a class who had a special need of who knows, because like again, different ends of spectrums, but also different things that kids are dealing with. But all of those kids would be taken from the classes with their peers, with kids who could have stood to learn something about acceptance, and all those kids were ripped out and stuffed in a portable, and it was called the special ed class. You know what I mean? And when you think about that today, just the idea that they took, now they did give them one extra teacher. So now you have two teachers in a portable trying to what?
Speak
You can't
slowly.
help. Yeah, you can't help. It's it, because you can't help 32
No.
kids who are suffering from different fucking things. But like, that's the generation we had. So it's like, I mean, mental health is, we are in the dark ages.
But I think it's like at least it's coming out. I often think about like my grandparents' generation and even my parents, and how, they didn't really have a second to think about their mental health or even like what they wanted to do. They just did what they were told. They kind of just like, you're supposed to go get a degree, get the house, get the marriage, have the kids.
It's the
That's
walk
it.
it
You
off.
did it.
It's the walk it off generation though too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're gonna be fine. Walk it off. My mom has epilepsy, and when she was a kid, the government literally came out to the farm to try and take her because they were going to put her in an institution because her epilepsy was thought to be a mental problem, and they got a hard no from Papa, but
Yeah.
they literally, unbelievable. I think I really what's the answer from a couple of comics who don't know anything? But I think I think if we start, the start would be to just leave our phones at home, and then try to involve yourself in your own community by helping the people that are directly around you, and let your neighbors become your neighbors again, because that was a really beautiful way to live at one point, where you knew that every house on the block you were on had your back, because instead of killing hours on doom scrolling Facebook and shit, you were making friendships with the people right around you.
Well, I remember this, like this, my own personal battle that I had. I had this like kind of moment where I lived in this apartment down near like downtown near like Church and Wellesley area, and there's a lot of homeless people in that area because there's two shelters that are nearby and kind of like assistance centers. And I remember it was like pouring rain one day, and there was a guy that when I went to throw out the trash, he was kind of just like huddled underneath like a rooftop, kind of waiting at the rain, and he looked homeless, right? Like he looked like he had been there for a little bit, and he was just drenched. And I immediately had the thought of like I need to help this guy. Like what can I do to help him out the small way that I can? And I remember like looking through my clothes and I was like, I should just give him one of my shirts or something. Cause it's just, it'd be nice to, you're soaking wet. There's nothing better than putting on a nice dry shirt, right? When you get the chance, when the rain stops. But then I had this weird thought that creeped into my head when I grabbed the shirt. And it was like, but what if I need this shirt? And I literally had to fight that feeling of selfishness that felt almost like it felt like a basic instinct to be selfish in that moment, right? Like it's a thought that came in with no, I didn't conjure it up. It just popped into my head to like, what if I need it? And then I had to say to myself, like, well, go buy another one.
Yeah.
You could just buy it again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he can't buy it. So he
Yeah.
needs someone to just give it to him. And you had the thought to do it, so you should just go do that. But it's
And
like it's
that's
an
your
inner
first
battle.
instinct.
It's an inner battle
Yeah.
that you have to kind of fight a little bit.
But I think that's your first instinct is I think where we're at our best, you know what I mean? And I think like, where all that other stuff comes in is I think that's probably a lot of the garbage that we're, digesting on the daily, where it's I can't believe that we even our advertising has gotten to the point where people have nothing and they seem like they're selling us harder than ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
what fucking blood from what rock do you want, man? Because like, it constantly inundated with advertising more than we ever were, and I don't know where people are getting the fucking money, you know what I mean? Like things are pretty broken. Like I said, like we grew up at a good time, like when you think about kids growing up, I can't imagine being a kid wrapping your head around the fact that Donald Trump was a president. He might be a president again for Christ's sakes.
That just shows you, like, I always I heard this and I thought it was like I can't remember who said it, but like when Donald Trump became president, uh, he was more so like the coroner coming in and pronouncing that the country was dead. You know,
That's it,
he didn't kill the country. Like it was dead at that point. The fact that he like
Yeah,
was so
man.
easily made it through all the rounds off of just basic charisma. Essentially, he didn't have good policies that he was like
And
talking
I don't
about, and
even, you know what? I think people give him charisma, but I think instead of charisma, you know what I think it was is that I honestly think that he played on a formula where they figured it out, right? And very little to do with charisma to me because like I said, I don't want to give him that. I think what he
sure.
did I think he played to the stupids. You know what I
Well,
mean? Like he
the
looked at this mass of people and they needed a spark. You know
mhm.
what I mean? Like, most of the bigotry and the hatred and all of the garbage that the Magna or these Trumpers spew is all stuff that they were feeling before him. And then it's for
Mhm.
some reason, they take just like in a Bible, they'll take a few verses of something he said and they run with it because they feel like it's a green light for hatred.
Sure.
And it's man, it's this divisive thing, they've always been really good at dividing everybody and making everybody just kind of like fucking hate each other. And it's really the most embarrassing thing ever. Like, I mean, I'm in a place of complete privilege. I am the fucking poster child for what Hitler's little dream would have been: blonde hair, blue eyes, fucking. But so it's weird for me to even have an opinion, but I think if I were to have an opinion about any of it, is that I think if you're a racist person in any way, then you are a fucking moron because it's the dumbest thing in the world. Like if
I would
people they are
say
so dumb.
you're a dumb person if you're racist if you're like young, because it's like you have such a like like the open internet, to really get to know these people. If you meet a woman or an old man who's 90 and they're racist, it's like, oh, that's your foundation. Like
Well, it goes back to ignorance, right?
you were
It
raised
goes
on
it,
ignorance, you know,
it
like
goes
it's
back to ignorance killing empathy, right?
yeah.
Like the idea that like of course you can't, it's again human nature. There's greed, and then there's this fear of the unknown, and how like we want to back up and then tribalize, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
that we've got more people that have our back. But really, like, it's been the one thing that people have enjoyed stirring the pot with to keep us focused on when other bigger things are at play. And it's like, if we started looking at it more like, we're team Earth, like there's
Yeah,
a
we
lot
need an
more out
alien
there
invasion, I
guaranteed.
think.
Yeah, if we had an alien invasion, that would definitely draw people together. I
We
just think
hope.
that,
We
like,
hope.
oh, yeah. I think wherever you can, you've got to try and step up, and you've got to fucking remind people really quick that that shit's got to stop, because like the faster we can get it, the better. I don't want to have to wait another 40 years to make it an inch, because like, from the 60s and Martin Luther King Jr. and all of that, to think that at one point we thought we had this almost licked, and then like what the fuck, all of everything that's happening right now is rather embarrassing, is what it is. And I hope this younger generation takes over sooner. Here's maybe the problem: is we got to stop letting 80-year-olds run the country, like, or 90-year-olds.
Sleepwalk us into a war, for fuck's sake.
Exactly, fucking weekend at Biden's, and Trump's what, a day younger than Biden or something. It's yeah, you know what, man? The CEOs of the big businesses, and I think that's where it starts, is that like government's got to start looking out for people again and not looking out for these big businesses. And I think that's probably just that's the bare bones of it all, and
Well, you need
it's
someone in a position like, I know I brought up Mr. Beast before, but he has, people have asked him like, would you want to be president one day? And he was like, yeah, sure. Like when I'm maybe in my 40s or something, that would be something that I would do. And his pitch for becoming president would be, he goes, I make, as a president, you make like 400 grand a year. He goes, that's tons of money to live off of. He goes, I would take all of the money that I've made in my life and just give it away. Just give it to every American citizen. Here it is. We'll just divide it equally amongst 300 million people, whatever that
yeah.
equals out to, that he's made to that time. And then that'll be the vote for me pitch. If I get in, that's my first order. Give away all my money. Because then he's like,
I
I'm not,
think
I'm not bought. I don't care about like,
yeah,
people trying to bribe me. And that's the one good thing that Trump had, was he was rich going in. So the people that were buying him out were only people that served his ego and those interests rather than his bank account. He wasn't trying to make
right,
himself richer, because if he did, if Trump wanted to make himself richer as president, he would have done multiple wars, which is what we're
right.
seeing with Biden. You've got
I,
Ukraine,
I think
you've got Israel. Like, it's a get rich quick scheme, because he feeds off of these Lockheed Martin and all of these big war companies that he gets a kickback on, and like
what, Black Flag or whatever it is that one of them?
BlackRock. Yeah,
BlackRock.
BlackRock.
Yeah.
They're like an investment company where they buy real estate or whatever. It's what?
Yeah, we need superheroes, people, the vigilantes, to just burn these people to the ground. Because if not, I think if we play by the rules that they've set up, I think it's pretty clear we're gonna fail.
Yeah. It seems
Unfortunate.
very like set up for failure. But this younger
Yeah.
generation worries me too, in that like it seems like, and South Park made fun of this recently on their recent TV special that they did called the Panderverse. But Randy goes, oh, I realized that you kids don't know how to do shit anymore. Like, you don't know. And then he realizes that he doesn't know how to do shit either. It's like they have to fix the stove and he can't figure out how to fix the stove. And I'm like, that's going to be a real thing. Like,
It's a real thing right now, man.
things break and people don't know how to fix it.
Dude, there was a time where, like, if your car fucked up, guys would have learned just enough to fix your car.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the cars that they're making today, for the last maybe even 20 years, come with enough onboard computer stuff now where anybody who knew old school mechanics isn't going to be able to fix a fucking thing. It goes down to everything. Like, I'm lucky in that sense, being born in 1980 and growing up on a lake in the middle of nowhere. There's a lot of things I know how to do that not the average person knows how to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it also was very difficult for me to set up this fucking Zoom thing. So, we all have
But
our
hey, I bet you could
strengths
change
and
a
our.
tire, you know?
Oh no, I actually we just put my winters on myself
Nice.
because
There you go.
you can do that. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you're right. I think something's got to change. I think culturally there needs to be a big change. I would love if somebody were to be able to, like, take the lead somehow and actually be able to. That's kind of what it feels like. I think in some respects it feels
Yeah.
like, who's got the reins on this? Like,
Yeah.
who's the grown up? Because when everyone's got their hand in the pot and everybody is fucking around, and it no longer feels like there's, because look, for everything you can come down on Obama for, because I know he's got his detractors and his as many as he might have. I don't know, but at least there was a sense that when he was the president of the free world, there was a certain amount of fuckery you wouldn't expect. Like, I don't know, just somebody like a grown up at the kids table or something like.
He spoke and acted presidential. I mean,
That's it.
behind the
There's not a
scenes,
goddamn presidential bone in Trump's body, and
but
then Biden.
I don't think it, like, we always want to change the person at the top thinking that it's going to be this trickle down effect. But I think what you really need to do is you need to, like, have someone like the minister of education should be the most important role, because that person needs to restructure the entire school system. And you start at the school system, you start with the kids, teaching them the way that we want the future to look like, and then
Yeah,
let that foster. You can't really, like, enforce rules on adults and then expect things to change, right?
that's
But
what you call the
you can
long
raise
game.
kids. You can raise kids as in a long game and teach them, like, this stuff is important. You need to know how to
Yeah.
fix this. You need to know how to do your taxes. You need to know all of this
Oh,
shit.
God forbid. Can you imagine coming out of high school with just those simple?
Different world immediately.
My God. You haven't left me with a lot of what next week's word should be: hope.
Yeah. I mean, we did an episode on
Empathy is
hope.
good for Yeah, empathy is good for today.
No, you
It's
always
tough,
got to
man.
find the hope, man. There's always hope wherever
Yeah,
you look. Like,
that's why you keep trucking along. But um, I think that would be probably my message, would just be to try and shrink your community a little bit and make
mm-hmm.
sure that, like, those people that are your actual community, that they know that you care about them, and that that they're safe and that you're looking out for them, and I promise they'll look out for you. And I think that's a good place to start.
That's definitely the place where you'll also have the most impact as well. The people around
Right?
you, right? And then that can affect change out from there. There's
Little
one
things you
question.
do.
There's one
Hmm.
question I always ask everyone towards the end of the podcast too, and is if you could go, if you could pick up a phone right now and talk to a 15-year-old version of yourself, different timeline, so it doesn't even affect your current life, but it's a 15-year-old version of you on the other end. What advice do you give them?
I would say Vyvanse. I haven't, only because here's the thing. And this is why this trending thing, you might have picked up on that it kind of irks me, is that because I have had, even with talking to a couple close friends, I've had friends go, come on, like it's hooey, like walk it off kind of thing. I don't think, unless you've gone through it your whole life, and look, my whole life I thought that ADHD was just a kid running around in circles fucking frantically. That's what I thought ADHD was, and that's
Mm-hmm.
where I left it. So I was somebody who I thought for the longest time was suffering from depression, and I got my diagnosis because I finally was getting some therapy. And I had a therapist tell me, look, man, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that you're not depressed, but I'm almost positive that a lot of your depression comes from being undiagnosed ADHD. Has anyone ever told you that? And I was like, Nah, come on, man. I'm not. I don't run around. I don't do jumping jacks all over the place. I'm pretty calm. And he goes,
Yeah.
"That's not what ADHD is." So then he gives me this list, and all of this to say this is that that kid from 15 on um, beat himself up really badly mentally for all sorts of things that now at 43 I'm finding out are symptoms of a neurodivergent thing that it's not necessarily that I couldn't help completely, but I didn't need to give myself a lifetime of lashings. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the big one was this. They talk about this ADHD paralysis, where you can get caught sort of rocking in a chair, maybe doom scrolling, or just honestly just sitting there staring at the fucking wall. But it's because you for me, you find yourself thinking about what feels like 100 different things at the same time, and then consequences, and then you stop and realize 45 minutes have gone by, and then my whole life it had been like, oh, you had things to do, you're so fucking lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I would say to that 15-year-old kid is oh man, pick up a pamphlet on this thing that they're just talking about, called ADHD, and then take it easy on yourself, because man, all sorts of these things that you read now with this literature that I've got, and it's like a checklist of whatever, and I hit all the boxes, and so many of the boxes are things that I looked at myself as being like a loser for,
Mm.
or just taking it, just being a dick to yourself. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's no way to do it. So to save yourself all that time doing that would have been nice. You know.
100%, man. That's powerful advice for yourself. People listening, you can follow Ryan. It's at Ryan Horwood Comedy on Instagram and at Ryan Horwood on Twitter. Anywhere else that you want people to check you out?
Oh, I've got four really awesome shows coming up, but you can check the Instagram for those. But I mean, the big one, next one is Jokers in Richmond Hill on November 10th,
That'll be
and
tonight.
that's tonight. All right,
Yeah,
excellent. So
yeah.
then, yeah, if you don't already have your ticket, and I know this was not funny at all, but here's the thing: is I think that it was
He is
probably
very funny,
important.
guys.
Yeah, I think it's probably important that we talk about these kind of things more
Yeah,
often.
of course.
I don't know how they did it, but they tricked us into feeling uncomfortable about talking about it.
Yeah, man.
And I think more people need to talk about coming together. And next time I see you there in Ottawa, I'm going to give you a great big hug there, Johnny. And I'll tell you, great set. I was lucky enough to do a show there in Orleans, where Johnny did a spot and just fucking murdered 65 or 70 very happy French Orleans, Ottawa people.
Yeah, they were great. That was a fun,
Yeah,
fun
they
show
were
we did.
a great crowd, and you had a great set.
Yeah, I've been having some good sets lately, so I hope that trend continues.
Well, he's
Especially
very
as I venture
charming.
into new material.
Yeah, you got to do it. He's
Always
very
will.
charming, ladies and gentlemen. Get out and see Johnny Rogers perform at a stand-up club close to you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you making the time to come on the show.
Hey, man,
Truly.
it was a pleasure meeting you, and I had a lot of fun doing it, man. You have a really good night.
Thanks, man. You too. I'll send you this link whenever it's out, all right?
All right, that sounds good, man.
All right, man. Have a great rest of your night. Take care.
Peace, peace. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to The Johnny Rogers Show. New episodes air every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.